mostly this spot is all about fading Houston. A young team like that, coming off a big emotional win against Cincinnati, right? Going nuts in the locker room. Stroud's getting all this MVP love from all kind of shows across all networks. And I just think about like when Brock Purdy had a great game against Dallas, and that was a big emotional win for the Niners, and he was amongst all these MVP talks, and everybody it has him in these conversations. And then he goes on the road the next week and lays a dud against the Browns. And then as 10-point favorites, completely out of the conversation. So I just think it's a good spot for Arizona. And they're healthy. Kyler Murray's back. James Conner's back. And you want to back Kyler Murray as a dog. He's 21, 12, and 2 ATS as a dog in his career. He's 16 and 8 as a road underdog in his career. Like, these are the spots you look for. You don't love Kyler as a favorite, but you do love him as a dog, especially when you're getting, over the key numbers of 3 and 4. So I think it's a good spot with how Houston looked last week, with how much kind of, they're falling into like America's team. I feel like last year and still this year, it's the Lions on the NFC side. I think this year the Houston Texans are starting to become that team. Like, everybody loves Stroud. How can you not? The kid's phenomenal. But I'm going to take Arizona here plus 4.5. Chelsa, I like them to win the game as well. I would take some of the money line at plus 185.
By the book, it feels like it has to be the Cardinals here, getting the 4.5. It is a great sell high spot on the Texans, who have been bad in this position. They have not covered as a favorite at all this season. They've been favorites 3 times this year and haven't covered in a single one. So I think you're right when it comes to that play. If you want to watch it, it's a 1 Eastern kick in Houston.
Pick six.
All right, so we've referenced it. You're looking for a team that's in a situation in which they usually excel. And that's why I'm taking the Cowboys, laying a big number against the Carolina Panthers. I'm taking the Cowboys minus 10.5 because the Cowboys are great as big favorites against bad teams. They had that one little slip up against the Arizona Cardinals, but that was back in September. And I almost like that they lost to a bad team, so they're not taking any game for granted. The Cowboys as favorites this year have been cash money, 6-1 against the number as favorites, and they have already had 5 wins this season by 17 plus points. Meanwhile, the Panthers have been bad in just about every situation, 1-8 straight up, and have only covered in 2 games this season. That was against the Bears and the Texans. Not exactly the cream of the crop, even though the Texans do look pretty good. And they only covered by the hook against the Bears. So I think the situation screams Cowboys here. I'm looking for a big win for Dim Boys. Let's take the Cowboys minus 10.5.
All right, Chelsea, I'm going back to the Pac-12, Oregon and Arizona State, and I'm calling my shot. The Ducks are on upset alert this weekend. I would take a little stab at 12-1 with the Sun Devils. Forks up, baby. I love them plus 23.5, though. If you want to buy the 24, go for it. Chelsea, this is all about the head coach for Arizona State, why I love this game for them. Their head coach, Kenny Dillingham, was the OC at Oregon with Dan Lanning ever since he took the job the last couple of years, was with Bo Nix last year, knows that team extremely well, and historically, Oregon has always struggled in the state of Arizona. They always struggle in Tucson. They always struggle in Tempe. I remember when Justin Herbert and Oregon went in there 5 years ago against Jaden Daniels, who was playing quarterback at the time for Arizona State. They lost outright as 2-touchdown favorites. They always kind of struggle in these type of games. So I think ASU keeps it close, right? We were talking about it at the top. Like, these are the kind of games where all the pressure is on Oregon. This is Arizona State's Super Bowl. They get to play one of the best teams in the country at home, and Kenny Dillingham gets to go against his former boss and play against some of his former players, or coach against some of his former players. So really like Arizona State to keep it close this weekend. And you know what? This is really an upset that nobody's talking about. Like, a lot of people think maybe Texas is in trouble this weekend, maybe potentially Georgia. But I'm going to take a shot with ASU on the money line, and I love them with the points this weekend.
Really interesting, especially because this game could have a ripple effect on the Heisman odds as well. We know Bo Nix right now in line as the favorite to win the Heisman. If you want to watch it, is a 4 Eastern kickoff in Tempe, Arizona.
Pick six.
All right, let's go to the ACC, shall we? I think Louisville's in the ACC, right? Still?
Yes,
Who knows?
they are.
I'm taking Louisville -1.5. This line seems suspiciously short, but I'm going to take it because Louisville has looked like one of the better teams in the AFC this season, or ACC, ACC, I should say. 9-1 and in the top 10 for the first time in 7 years. This is a massive year for the Cardinals. So maybe they looked a little shaky against Virginia last week, still managed to win, and we're not talking about a big spread here. It's 1.5. Meanwhile, Miami keeping it close with an elite Florida State team last week, losing just 27-20. But remember, that's a rivalry game. I feel like rivalry games always play a little bit closer, and FSU Miami definitely fits the bill. Time to sell high on the Hurricanes and buy in on Louisville here. The Cardinals over the course of the season, much better team, third best red zone defense in the nation, and top 15 nationally in third down, run, scoring, and total defense. It should be a really tough matchup for a Miami quarterback in Tyler Van Dyke, who's been incredibly inconsistent, was benched at one point in the season and has 11 picks in his last 5 games. Plus, Louisville just played on Thursday last week, so they have a few extra days of rest for this one. I'll take Louisville laying the 1.5 on the road at Miami. The Buffalo Bills now +180 to make the postseason, a seismic shift. But now that we have some injuries, some major injuries in the AFC, do you think these odds will shift again, PJ?
They might, Chelsa, and I'm going back and forth on Buffalo because, see, this is the hardest thing to do, really, in sports, and when we're talking about sports betting, is trying to separate how a team is playing currently and, like, in the back of your head, knowing what a team is capable of, right? Like, when Cincinnati was getting off to that slow start at the beginning of the year, a lot of people were saying the Bengals are done, like, this is who they are, they're not going to figure it out. And then obviously they did, and before heading into that Texans game, we all thought the Bengals were back to being the Bengals, and obviously now Burrow has that injury. But the Bills are so tough because it's been like 5 or 6 games now where the offense has not been good. Their defense has some key injuries to guys, and the schedule, Chelsa, is just brutal. They still have to go at Kansas City, at Philadelphia, at Miami. They have to play Dallas at home. The AFC, I've really never seen a conference like this. Like, the amount of teams that are 5-5, 5-4, it's crazy. And they have a tough schedule. So, as of today, I'm going to say no on Buffalo. I think they missed the playoffs. It is, intriguing to take them at that plus money, but with the way they're playing and that schedule that they have, I can't get there with Buffalo.
I don't think I can either. Like, I could see the scenario in which it happens because you're right. Aren't the Buffalo Bills one of those teams that has a really high ceiling? And we will see it in little bits and pieces. There was a singular drive, I think in their last game against the Broncos, where I thought to myself, oh my God, nobody can stop this offense. They were just so proficient down the field. And when Josh Allen is running the ball effectively too, and then they just have those turnovers. But turnovers are one of those things that if you can curtail them, you can really put yourself back in some of these games. So even though the Bills have an absolute gauntlet of a schedule, like you mentioned, up next, they have a really good defensive team in the Jets. If you're trying to figure out your offense, the Jets are usually not the cure. Then you go on the road to the Eagles, on the road to the Chiefs, you host the Cowboys, and then you go on the road to the Chargers. So a massive stretch for the Bills where we will really see what they're made of. If they can scratch off some wins against the best teams in the NFL, maybe we will see some life from Buffalo.